To our amazing viewers at Cheating Tales Lab, we'd love to hear, which part of the world are you joining us from? Let us know. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Discovery. Cole Bennett sat in the sterile hospital chair, watching his 7-year-old son Danny sleep fitfully under the pale fluorescent lights. The machines beeped rhythmically, monitoring vitals that had stabilized after 3 days of uncertainty. The accident had been brutal, a hit-and-run that left Danny with a broken leg, fractured ribs, and a concussion that had the doctors worried about brain swelling. Cole's wife Linda had left an hour ago, claiming exhaustion, though Cole noticed she'd been checking her phone constantly during her brief visits. She'd been distant for months, always finding excuses to be elsewhere, but Cole had attributed it to work stress at the marketing firm where she managed accounts. As a former Marine turned construction foreman, Cole understood stress differently. He'd built his small but profitable construction company from nothing after his military service, working 18-hour days to provide for his family. His weathered hands and scarred knuckles told stories of honest labor, but his sharp green eyes missed nothing, a trait that had kept him alive during 2 tours in Afghanistan. Danny stirred, mumbling something incoherent. Cole leaned forward, smoothing his son's brown hair that matched his own. On the nightstand, scattered among get-well cards from Danny's classmates, lay several drawings the boy had made during his conscious moments. Most were typical kid artwork, stick figures of the family, dogs, superheroes. But one drawing caught Cole's attention as he tidied the table. It had been folded and seemed different from the others. As he unfolded it, his blood chilled. The crude but unmistakable image showed a car, a blue sedan, striking a small figure. In the background, a tall man was running away from the scene. But what made Cole's hands tremble was the license plate Danny had carefully drawn on the car, TRW 4429. Cole recognized those letters and numbers. He'd seen them every morning for the past 3 months in the parking lot of Danny's school, on a blue Honda Accord. The car belonged to Troy Whitman, the school's athletic director and Danny's soccer coach. The drawing fell from Cole's trembling fingers. His son hadn't been the victim of a random hit-and-run. Someone Danny knew, someone they trusted, had deliberately struck him and fled the scene. "Daddy." Danny's weak voice broke through Cole's shock. "I'm here, buddy," Cole managed, his voice steady despite the rage building inside him. "The man. He came back," Danny whispered, his eyes still closed. "He said sorry, but he was scared." "What man, Danny?" "Coach Troy. He didn't mean to, but he was with the pretty lady. She was crying." Cole's world tilted. The pretty lady. Danny had always called Linda mommy, never the pretty lady, which meant Danny had seen Troy with another woman in that car. And that woman had been crying, probably because they'd just hit a child and fled. "Did you see where they went, son?" "To our house," Danny mumbled before drifting back to sleep. Cole sat back, pieces clicking into place with devastating clarity. Linda's absences, her phone calls, her guilt-ridden behavior around Danny's bedside. She hadn't been working late. She'd been with Troy Whitman. And now, somehow, their affair had nearly killed his son. Cole pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts until he found Troy's number, saved there for soccer team communications. His finger hovered over the call button, but then he stopped. Confronting them now would be the reaction of an emotional man. Cole Bennett had learned patience in the Marines, and patience was what would serve him now. Instead, he opened his notes app and began typing everything Danny had said, everything he'd observed, every detail of the drawing. He photographed it from multiple angles, then carefully folded it and slipped it into his wallet. As he watched his son sleep, Cole made a promise. Troy Whitman and Linda Bennett would pay for what they'd done. Not just for the affair. That was a betrayal Cole could never forgive, but for endangering his son and leaving him broken on the asphalt like roadkill. The old Cole, the Marine who'd earned a Purple Heart and 2 commendations for valor, stirred awake for the first time in years. And unlike the forgiving husband and father he'd become, this Cole had never learned mercy. Chapter 2. The Investigation. Cole spent the next 2 days maintaining his facade while gathering intelligence. He hired Bryce Murray, a private investigator and fellow veteran he'd met at the VA hospital, giving him 48 hours to document Linda's movements and Troy's whereabouts during the accident. The results exceeded Cole's darkest expectations. Bryce's report contained photos, credit card receipts, and phone records that painted a sordid picture. Linda and Troy had been meeting at the Riverside Motel every Tuesday and Thursday for 6 months. On the day of Danny's accident, hotel records showed they'd checked out at 3:47 p.m., exactly 12 minutes before the hit-and-run occurred 3 blocks away from the school. Security footage from a nearby gas station showed Troy's Honda Accord speeding through the intersection at 3:52 p.m. with visible front-end damage. Most damning of all, Bryce had obtained footage from the hospital parking lot showing Linda and Troy arguing intensely in his damaged car 2 hours after the accident, while Cole had been inside holding vigil over Danny. But Cole needed more than evidence of guilt. He needed leverage. "There's something else," Bryce said during their meeting at a diner outside town. "Troy Whitman's got problems. Real problems." Bryce slid a manila folder across the table. Inside were bank statements showing Troy was drowning in gambling debts. Over $200,000 owed to various creditors, including some with connections to organized crime families in the state capital. "He's been stealing from the school's athletic fund," Bryce continued. "Small amounts, but it adds up. Your wife doesn't know about this part. My source says Troy's been promising people he'd have the money soon, but they're getting impatient." Cole studied the documents, his construction-trained mind already building the framework of his revenge. Troy wasn't just an adulterer. He was a desperate man living on borrowed time. And desperate men made fatal mistakes. "What about Linda's background?" Cole asked. "Clean mostly, but interesting family history." Bryce pulled out another file. "Her brother Rick Summers, the one she never talks about. He's doing 8 years in federal prison for armed robbery. Got out on appeal last month, but he's violated parole twice. She's been sending him money through a shell account." Cole had never heard Linda mention a brother, but it explained the mysterious monthly transfers he'd noticed from their joint account. More importantly, it gave him another piece to play. That evening, Cole sat across from Linda at dinner, watching her pick at her food while texting someone under the table. Danny was still in the hospital, but his doctors were optimistic about a full recovery. "How was work today?" Cole asked casually. "Busy. The Hartwell account is demanding revisions again." Linda didn't look up from her phone. "That's strange. I called your office around 3, and Denise said you'd left early for a dentist appointment." Linda's texting stopped. Yes, I forgot about that. Emergency root canal. Very painful." Cole nodded sympathetically. "Must have been terrible. I hope Dr. Morrison took good care of you." "Yes, Wait, how did you know which dentist?" "Lucky guess. Dr. Morrison's been our family dentist for 5 years." Linda's face went pale as she realized her mistake. There had been no dentist appointment, and Cole's casual tone hadn't fooled her. He knew something. "Cole, I can explain." "No need," Cole said, standing up. "I'm going back to the hospital. Danny was asking for you earlier, but I told him you were too busy with work." As Cole drove back to the hospital, he felt the familiar calm that had always preceded his most dangerous missions overseas. Linda and Troy thought they were dealing with a naive husband who could be manipulated with tears and excuses. They had no idea they'd just declared war on someone who had survived Kandahar and Helmand Province. By the time Danny was released from the hospital, Cole would be ready to begin their systematic destruction. Chapter 3: The Foundation. Cole spent Danny's final night in the hospital laying the groundwork for his campaign. While his son slept, he made 3 crucial phone calls from the empty cafeteria. The first was to Rick Summers, Linda's paroled brother, using a burner phone he'd purchased that afternoon. "Who is this?" Rick's voice was cautious, suspicious. "Someone who knows your sister's been sending you money she can't afford," Cole said. "Money that belongs to my son. Look, whoever you are. I'm Cole Bennett, Linda's husband, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to earn legitimate money instead of stealing it." The line went quiet. Cole could practically hear Rick calculating odds and options. "What kind of opportunity?" "The kind where you help me teach your sister's boyfriend about consequences. $5,000, cash, for one night's work." "What kind of work?" "The kind you went to prison for, except this time it serves justice." Cole gave Rick an address and a time, then hung up. The next call was to Bruno Castellano, a name Bryce had provided from Troy's gambling debts. Bruno ran book for several mid-level crime families and had a reputation for creative debt collection. "Mr. Castellano, my name is Cole Bennett. I understand Troy Whitman owes you money. Who wants to know?" "Someone who can guarantee you'll collect, with interest." Cole outlined his proposition. In exchange for detailed information about Troy's debts and payment schedule, Cole would ensure Bruno received everything owed plus a substantial bonus. All Bruno had to do was follow Cole's timeline and deliver specific messages at specific moments. The third call was to Danny's school district superintendent, a man named Howard Pike who Cole had met during several parent conferences. "Howard, this is Cole Bennett, Danny's father. I'm calling about a serious situation involving Troy Whitman." "Cole, how's Danny recovering?" "Better each day, thanks. But I've discovered some troubling information about Coach Whitman that affects student safety. I'd like to meet with you privately tomorrow." Cole had no intention of immediately revealing Troy's embezzlement or his role in Danny's accident. Instead, he would plant seeds of suspicion, create pressure, and watch Troy scramble to cover his tracks. Panicked people made mistakes, and mistakes created opportunities. When Linda arrived the next morning to take Danny home, Cole was feeding their son breakfast with apparent normalcy. "How did he sleep?" she asked, not quite meeting Cole's eyes. "Like an angel. He's been talking a lot about the accident, remembering more details." Linda's coffee cup trembled slightly in her hands. "What kind of details?" "He saw the car clearly. The license plate, the driver. Even remembered seeing a woman crying in the passenger seat." Cole kept his voice conversational while watching Linda's face drain of color. "Funny thing, he keeps saying the woman looked familiar." "Children's memories after trauma can be unreliable," Linda said quickly. "True, but physical evidence doesn't lie." Cole pulled out his phone and showed her a photo of Danny's drawing. "The police will be very interested in this when I show them today." Linda stared at the drawing, her breathing becoming rapid and shallow. Cole could see her mind racing, calculating how much Danny might have seen, how much he might remember, how much damage control was possible. "Cole, we need to talk." "Yes, we do. But not here, not in front of Danny." Cole stood up, his 6-foot frame casting a shadow over his wife. "Tonight, after I put him to bed, we'll have a very thorough conversation about Tuesday afternoons in the Riverside Motel." Linda's sharp intake of breath confirmed what Cole already knew. She understood that her secret was blown, but she had no idea that this was just the opening move in a much larger game. As they drove Danny home, Cole watched Linda in the rearview mirror, seeing her text frantically on her phone. She would warn Troy, of course. They would panic, probably plan to confess and beg forgiveness, offer counseling and promises of change. Cole almost smiled. They still thought this was about saving their marriage. They had no idea this was about war. Chapter 4. The First Strike. That evening, while Danny slept safely in his own bed for the first time in a week, Cole found Linda pacing the living room like a caged animal. She'd been crying, her makeup was smeared, and her hands shook as she lit her third cigarette in an hour. "Where's Troy tonight?" Cole asked, settling into his favorite chair with a beer. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Linda, I've seen the photos. Hotel receipts. Security footage. Your boyfriend's car with fresh damage from hitting my son." Cole's voice remained eerily calm. "The only question is whether you want to have this conversation honestly, or if you prefer I call Detective Rodriguez right now." Linda collapsed onto the couch, her last defenses crumbling. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this." "How was it supposed to happen?" "You were going to leave me for a man who hits children with his car and drives away." He panicked. "It was an accident, Cole. Troy's not a bad person. Troy Whitman is a coward, a thief, and nearly a child killer." Cole leaned forward. "But you're wrong about one thing. This wasn't an accident." Linda looked up, confused. "See, I did some digging today. Talked to Howard Pike. Showed him some interesting financial records. Turns out Troy's been skimming from the athletic fund for months. He's in debt to people who break legs for late payments." Cole pulled out his phone and scrolled through photos. "These are pictures of Troy meeting with Bruno Castellano yesterday. Know who Bruno is?" Linda shook her head, though her face showed growing terror. "Bruno collects gambling debts for some very serious people. And yesterday, he gave Troy a deadline. Pay $50,000 by Friday, or suffer consequences." "That's tomorrow, Linda. I don't understand what this has to do with." "Troy hit Danny on purpose." Cole's voice cut through her protests like a blade. "He knew I carry good insurance. Knew a hit and run would trigger the uninsured motorist coverage. He was planning to disappear with you and the insurance money." Linda's face went ashen. "That's not. Troy wouldn't. Check your bank account. The one you thought I didn't know about." Cole watched her pull out her phone with trembling hands. Look at the deposit from this afternoon. Linda stared at her screen, seeing a deposit of $75,000 from Cole's insurance company, paid out that morning for Danny's medical expenses and pain and suffering. Troy called the insurance company pretending to be me. Cole continued. Forged my signature on the direct deposit form. That money was supposed to be in his account by now, but I had it redirected to yours instead. How did you? Because I've been 3 steps ahead of you since Tuesday. Cole stood up, towering over his sobbing wife. Troy's probably checking his account right now, realizing the money isn't there. Bruno's boys are expecting their payment in the morning, and your boyfriend just became a very desperate man. As if summoned by Cole's words, Linda's phone rang. Troy's name flashed on the screen. Answer it, Cole commanded. Put it on speaker. Linda's hand shook as she accepted the call. Linda, the money, it's not there. Something went wrong with the insurance payout. Troy's voice was frantic, desperate. Troy, Cole knows. He knows everything. The line went silent for several seconds. How much does he know? Troy finally asked. About us. About the accident. About your gambling debts. Linda looked at Cole, who nodded encouragingly. He says you hit Danny on purpose for the insurance money. That's not true. Linda, you have to believe me. Then explain why you're calling about money before asking how she's doing. Cole said, loud enough for the phone to pick up his voice. Another silence. Then Cole? Cole, listen to me. No, you listen to me, Troy. You have until midnight to turn yourself into the police for the hit and run. If you don't, I'll make sure Bruno Castellano knows exactly where to find you. Cole ended the call and pocketed Linda's phone. What happens now? Linda whispered. Now? Now we wait and see what kind of man your lover really is. Cole headed toward the stairs. I suggest you call a lawyer. You're going to need one. As Cole tucked Danny into bed, his son looked up with clear, trusting eyes. Daddy, is Coach Troy in trouble? Yes, son. He made some very bad choices. Will he say sorry to me? Cole kissed his son's forehead. One way or another, he'll pay for what he did. Through the bedroom window, Cole could see a car parked across the street, one of Bruno's men, already watching the house. Troy had until midnight to surrender to police. After that, he'd be dealing with people far less patient than Cole. The first phase of Cole's revenge was complete. Linda and Troy were separated, panicked, and facing consequences they'd never imagined. But this was just the beginning. By dawn, they would both understand that betraying Cole Bennett came with a price that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. Chapter 5. The Trap Closes. At 11:47 p.m., Troy Whitman made his choice. Instead of surrendering to police, he drove to Cole's house with a baseball bat and desperation in his eyes. Cole was waiting. He'd sent Linda to her sister's house with Danny, claiming they needed protection from Troy's unstable behavior. What he didn't tell her was that Rick Summers was already positioned in the backyard, and Bruno's men were watching every exit from the neighborhood. Troy's Honda screeched into the driveway, and he stumbled out, still wearing his coaching clothes from what would be his last day at the school. Cole watched from the kitchen window as Troy approached the front door, bat raised. The doorbell rang 3 times before Troy started pounding. Cole, open up. We need to talk. Cole opened the door, unarmed and seemingly calm. Troy raised the bat, threateningly. Where's my money, you bastard? Your money. Cole stepped aside, inviting Troy, Indiana. You mean the insurance payout for nearly killing my son? Troy swung the bat at Cole's head, but Cole had been expecting it. Years of military training kicked in. He ducked, grabbed Troy's wrist, and twisted until the bat clattered to the floor. In one fluid motion, Cole had Troy face down on the hardwood, arm pinned behind his back. Here's what's going to happen, Cole said, his voice barely above a whisper. You're going to sit in that chair and listen very carefully. Cole zip-tied Troy's hands to the wooden kitchen chair, then sat across from him at the table. The money is in an account you can't access. The police are looking for you. I called in a domestic disturbance report 20 minutes ago, and Bruno Castellano's boys are parked outside, waiting to see if you leave this house alive. Troy's face was already swelling from where Cole had pressed his face into the floor. What do you want? I want you to understand what happens to people who threaten my family. Cole pulled out a tablet and showed Troy a video feed. That's your apartment. Those are Bruno's men breaking down your door right now. On the screen, 3 large men were systematically destroying Troy's apartment, looking for money or valuables to collect on his debt. And this, Cole swiped to another feed, Is your ex-wife's house in Portland? Troy's eyes widened. Sarah doesn't have anything to do with this. She does now. See, when desperate men can't pay their debts, collection agencies expand their searches. Your ex-wife, your teenage daughter Emma, they're all potential leverage points. You sick bastard. Leave them out of this. Cole leaned back, studying Troy's panicked face. I'm not the one who put them in danger. You did, when you decided to steal from children and hit my son with your car. It was an accident. The hit and run was an accident. The embezzlement was deliberate. The affair with my wife was deliberate. Running away instead of helping my injured son was deliberate. Cole's voice remained calm, but his eyes were arctic. You made choices, Troy? Now you live with consequences. Cole pulled out his phone and dialed a number. Bruno? Yeah, he's here. No, he doesn't have your money. He listened for a moment. Okay, I'll tell him. Cole ended the call and looked at Troy. Bruno says you have 1 hour to produce $50,000, or his men start visiting your family members. I don't have that kind of money. You know I don't. But Linda does. The insurance payout is sitting in her account right now. Cole pulled up Linda's banking app on his tablet. All I need is her authorization to transfer the funds. Troy's face cycled through confusion, hope, and then dawning horror as he understood the trap. You want me to convince Linda to give up the money. I want you to choose between your own skin and my wife's financial security. Cole smiled coldly. Same choice you made when you decided to use my son as a payday. For the next 30 minutes, Cole listened to Troy make increasingly desperate phone calls to Linda, begging her to transfer the money to Bruno's account. Linda, believing she was saving Troy's life, authorized the transfer from her sister's house. When it was done, Cole cut Troy's restraints. Now what? Troy asked, rubbing his wrists. Now you call the police and confess to the hit and run. What? But I paid Bruno. You paid him with stolen money. Money that belonged to my son. Cole pulled out another phone, Danny's old one. I recorded every word of you admitting to embezzlement and attempting to profit from hitting a child. The police are very interested in this recording. Troy stared at the phone, finally understanding that he'd been manipulated into confessing everything. You set this up. All of it. I told you I was 3 steps ahead. Cole stood up. Bruno got his money, so you'll live through the night. But in the morning, you'll be arrested for hit and run, embezzlement, and insurance fraud. Linda will be facing charges as an accessory after the fact. What about Danny? What about your family? Cole's expression hardened. Danny will recover with the best medical care money can buy. Care I'll pay for with my own money, not stolen insurance payouts. As for Linda, he shrugged. She made her choice when she chose you. Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. I called them 5 minutes ago, Cole said. Told them I'd subdued a burglar who was threatening my family. As the police cars surrounded the house, Cole looked at Troy one last time. In prison, they have a special hatred for people who hurt children. I made sure word gets around about what you did to Danny. Troy's face went white with terror as he realized his ordeal was just beginning. Cole Bennett had won the first battle, but the war was far from over. Chapter 6, The Web Titans. Linda returned home the next morning to find police tape across her driveway, and her husband calmly making breakfast for Danny as if nothing had happened. Where's Troy? She demanded, still in yesterday's clothes. County jail. Attempted burglary, assault with a deadly weapon, and several other charges. Cole flipped pancakes while Danny colored at the kitchen table, his injured leg propped up on a pillow. He should make bail by next week, assuming he can find someone to post the $100,000. Linda sank into a chair, the weight of the situation finally hitting her. The money. The insurance money is gone. You transferred it to a gambling debt collector. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit is very interested in that transaction. You tricked me. You made me think. I made you choose between money and Troy's life. You chose Troy. Cole set a plate of pancakes in front of Danny, then turned to face his wife. Interesting priorities for a mother whose son was nearly killed. Danny looked up from his coloring book. Mommy, why are you crying? Linda wiped her eyes and tried to compose herself. Mommy just made some mistakes, baby. Like Coach Troy did when he hit me with his car. The question hung in the air like a bomb. Linda stared at her son, realizing he remembered more than anyone had told him. Danny, Cole said gently, why don't you go watch cartoons in the living room? After Danny left, Linda turned on Cole with fury. You told him? I didn't have to. He saw everything. The car, The license plate, Troy running away. He saw you in the passenger seat, crying. Cole sat down across from her. Our son isn't stupid, Linda. He knows you were there when Troy hit him. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. You were just having an affair with a man who needed money desperately enough to run down a child for insurance fraud. Cole leaned forward. Tell me, when did you know? When Troy told you he'd hit Danny, or when you saw my son lying broken on the asphalt? Linda's silence was answer enough. You knew before the hospital? You knew, and you sat beside Danny's bed for 3 days, holding his hand and comforting him, knowing your boyfriend had put him there. I was protecting. You were protecting yourself. Cole's voice cut through her excuses. Now let me tell you what's going to happen next. Cole pulled out a thick manila folder and spread documents across the table. These are divorce papers. No fault, citing irreconcilable differences. You'll get the house. It's worth about $200,000 after the mortgage. I'll take my business, my tools, and Danny. You can't take my son. I can and I will. Cole showed her another document. This is a custody agreement. Full custody to me, supervised visitation for you. Any judge who sees Danny's drawing and hears about your role in the hit and run will agree that you're an unfit mother. Linda stared at the papers, her world crumbling around her. Cole, please. We can work this out. I made mistakes, but this isn't about mistakes. This is about character. Cole gathered the documents. You chose Troy over Danny. You chose covering up a crime over getting help for your injured son. You chose to take insurance money meant for a child's medical care and give it to a criminal. I can change. I can be better. Cole stood up, his decision final. Some things can't be forgiven, Linda. Some choices reveal who a person really is. The doorbell rang, interrupting the conversation. Cole answered it to find Detective Rodriguez from the police department. Mr. Bennett, we need to speak with your wife about the Troy Whitman case. Linda's face went pale as Cole led the detective into the kitchen. Mrs. Bennett, we have evidence placing you at the scene of the hit and run involving your son. We'd like you to come to the station for questioning. Am I under arrest? Not yet, but we recommend you bring a lawyer. After Linda left with the detective, Cole sat with Danny in the living room, holding his son close. Daddy, is Mommy going to jail? I don't know, buddy. But whatever happens, you and I will be okay. Danny nodded, trusting in his father's strength. Will Coach Troy say sorry? Cole looked out the window at the police tape still fluttering in the breeze. Some people don't know how to be sorry, son. They only know how to be afraid. As he watched the detective's car disappear down the street with Linda in the back seat, Cole felt a grim satisfaction. Phase 2 of his plan was complete. Linda and Troy were both facing criminal charges, their relationship destroyed, their futures in ruins. But Cole Bennett wasn't finished. Not yet. The final phase would ensure that the consequences of their betrayal followed them for the rest of their lives. Chapter 7. The Reckoning. 3 weeks later, Cole sat in a courthouse hallway while Danny played quietly with toy trucks beside him. Today was the custody hearing that would determine their future, and Cole had prepared for it like a military operation. Linda appeared at the far end of the hallway with her lawyer, a public defender who looked overwhelmed. She'd lost weight. Her hair was unwashed, and she wore the haunted expression of someone whose world had completely collapsed. Troy was already in prison, his bail revoked after he'd attempted to flee the state. He was facing 8 to 12 years on multiple charges, and Bruno Castellano had made sure word spread through the prison about Troy's crimes against a child. Mr. Bennett, a court clerk appeared. Judge Hawkins will see you now. Inside the courtroom, Cole presented his case methodically. Danny's drawing, hospital records, police reports, evidence of Linda's affair and her knowledge of the hit and run, the insurance fraud, the abandonment of maternal duty. Linda's lawyer tried to argue for joint custody, claiming Linda had been manipulated by Troy and deserved a second chance. But when Judge Hawkins asked Linda directly about her actions on the day of the accident, her answers damned her. Mrs. Bennett, when you realized Mr. Whitman had struck your son with his vehicle, what was your first action? I told him to go to the hospital. To turn himself in? Linda hesitated. To check on Danny. But Mr. Whitman didn't go to the hospital, did he? No. Where did he go? To his apartment. And you went with him? Yes. While your son lay injured and unconscious in a hospital bed? Linda's silence stretched for 30 seconds before she whispered, yes. Judge Hawkins looked disgusted. Mrs. Bennett, in my 20 years on the bench, I have rarely seen such a clear case of a parent choosing their own interests over a child's welfare. Sole custody is awarded to Mr. Bennett, with supervised visitation for Mrs. Bennett, pending the resolution of her criminal charges. Outside the courthouse, Linda approached Cole one last time. "This isn't over," she said, her voice brittle with desperation. "I'll appeal. I'll fight this." "With what money?" Cole asked. "Your legal defense fund for the criminal trial? Your non-existent savings? The insurance money you gave to a loan shark?" Linda's face crumpled as she realized the scope of her situation. No money, no job. She'd been fired when the embezzlement scandal broke, facing potential prison time, and now no access to her son. "You destroyed my life," she whispered. "No, Linda. You destroyed your own life when you chose Troy Whitman over Danny." Cole picked up his son, who'd been waiting patiently on a nearby bench. "I just made sure there were consequences." As they walked to Cole's truck, Danny looked back at his mother standing alone on the courthouse steps. "Daddy, why is Mommy sad?" "Because she's finally understanding what her choices cost, son." That evening, Cole received a call from Bryce Murray, his private investigator. "Cole, you need to know, Linda's brother Rick is out of prison again. Word is he's looking for you." "Let him look," Cole said. "I'm not hard to find. This guy's dangerous. He blames you for Linda's situation. Rick Summers had his chance to do the right thing. He chose money instead." Cole looked out at his backyard, where Danny was playing on his swing set under the floodlights. If he wants to add assault to his parole violations, that's his choice. 2 days later, Rick Summers made his move. He broke into Cole's house while Danny was at school, planning to steal whatever he could find to pay for Linda's appeal lawyer. He made the mistake of still being there when Cole came home. Cole found Rick in his bedroom, stuffing jewelry and electronics into a pillowcase. The confrontation was brief and decisive. Rick was 35 years old, but soft from prison life and weakened by drug use. Cole was 38, hardened by military service and construction work, and fueled by protective rage. When the police arrived 20 minutes later, Rick was unconscious on the floor with a broken nose, fractured ribs, and a dislocated shoulder. Cole was sitting calmly on his front porch, completely uninjured. "Self-defense," Cole told the responding officers. "Man broke into my house while my son was at school. I neutralized the threat." Rick went back to prison for 10 years. Linda lost her last potential ally and source of help. At Danny's first soccer game of the new season, with a different coach, of course, Cole watched his son run and laugh like the accident had never happened. The boy was resilient, optimistic, trusting in his father's protection. "Mr. Bennett," another parent approached. "I wanted to thank you." "For what?" "For exposing Troy Whitman. My daughter Emma was on his team last year. She never said anything at the time, but after he was arrested, she told me he'd been inappropriate with some of the girls." Cole felt a cold satisfaction. Even in prison, Troy would be facing new accusations, new consequences for crimes Cole had never even suspected. "I'm just glad Danny's safe," Cole said. As they drove home from the game, Danny chattering excitedly about his goals and saves, Cole reflected on the completeness of his victory. Linda was facing trial, broke and alone. Troy was in prison, marked for violence by other inmates. Rick was back behind bars. The corruption at Danny's school had been exposed and cleaned up. Everyone who had threatened or betrayed Cole's family had paid a price that would follow them for years. And Danny, sweet, innocent Danny, was safe, happy, and had no idea how brutally his father had avenged the sins committed against him. Justice, Cole had learned in the Marines, wasn't always delivered by courts and judges. Sometimes it required a man willing to wage war against those who threatened the innocent. Sometimes it required someone who never forgot, never forgave, and never showed mercy to those who chose evil over good. Chapter 8. The Final Strike. 6 months after the custody hearing, Cole received an unexpected visitor. District Attorney Rebecca Flores sat across from him in his construction company office, reviewing a thick case file. "Mr. Bennett, we have a problem." "What kind of problem?" "Linda's public defender is pushing for a plea deal. Probation, community service, suspended sentence. She's claiming coercion, emotional manipulation, battered wife syndrome." Cole set down his coffee. "Linda was never a battered wife." "I know that. You know that. But her lawyer is painting a picture of an emotionally fragile woman manipulated by Troy Whitman and then psychologically terrorized by her husband's quest for revenge. What's your point? My point is that without Linda's cooperation, our case against Troy for the insurance fraud falls apart. She's the only witness who can testify about his premeditation. DA Flores leaned forward. She's threatening to recant her statement unless we recommend probation. Cole had been expecting this. Linda was desperate, backed into a corner, with nothing left to lose. Of course she would try to bargain her way out. What do you need from me? Evidence. Something that proves Linda was an active participant, not a victim. Cole reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a sealed envelope he'd been saving for this exact moment. Hidden camera footage from the Riverside Motel. Linda and Troy discussing the insurance scam 3 days before they hit Danny. DA Flores opened the envelope and examined the flash drive inside. How did you obtain this? Bryce Murray has contacts in hotel security. Turns out the Riverside Motel has been under surveillance by the DEA for drug trafficking. Every room is monitored. Cole smiled coldly. Linda and Troy had several very detailed conversations about how much money they could get from an accident claim. DA Flores plugged the drive into her laptop. On screen, grainy security footage showed Linda and Troy in their hotel room, discussing their plan in explicit detail. This is devastating, DA Flores said. She's clearly the mastermind. Linda was always smarter than Troy. He was just desperate enough to follow her lead. With this evidence, we can charge her with conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, child endangerment, and conspiracy to commit assault with a deadly weapon. DA Flores closed the laptop. She's looking at 5 to 7 years minimum. After the DA left, Cole called Bryce Murray. It's done, Cole said. Linda's plea deal just evaporated. You sure you want to push this hard? Danny's still going to grow up knowing his mother is in prison. Danny's going to grow up knowing that actions have consequences. That even people who are supposed to love you can choose evil. And that when they do, someone will hold them accountable. 3 weeks later, Linda Bennett was sentenced to 6 years in state prison. Troy Whitman received an additional 5 years when the insurance fraud conspiracy charges were added to his hit-and-run conviction. Cole sat in the courtroom gallery, watching Linda break down as the judge read her sentence. She looked back at him once, her eyes filled with hatred and despair. Cole felt nothing. No satisfaction, no guilt, no regret. Just the calm certainty that justice had been served. Outside the courthouse, he found Danny waiting with Mrs. Patterson, the elderly neighbor who sometimes babysit. How did it go, Daddy? It went fine, buddy. Mommy's going to be away for a while. Danny nodded solemnly. At 8 years old, he understood more than most adults gave him credit for. Is she sorry for what she did? Cole looked back at the courthouse where Linda was being led away in handcuffs. I don't think she knows how to be sorry, son. But that's okay. We don't need her to be sorry. We just need her to be gone. That evening, Cole and Danny had dinner at their favorite restaurant, a small Italian place where the owner always remembered Danny's name and gave him extra breadsticks. Daddy, are you sad about Mommy? Cole considered the question carefully. I'm sad about what she chose to become, but I'm not sad that she's facing consequences for those choices. Will I see her again? Someday, when you're older, if you want to, but not for a long time. Danny nodded and went back to his spaghetti. The boy was remarkably resilient, adapting to their new normal with the flexibility of childhood. As they drove home, Cole reflected on the year that had passed since Danny's accident. Linda would spend the next 6 years in prison. Troy would serve at least 8, probably more when the other charges against him were prosecuted. Rick was back behind bars for a decade. Every person who had threatened or betrayed Cole's family was now facing long-term consequences for their choices. And Danny, the innocent victim at the center of it all, was happy, healthy, and secure in his father's protection. Cole Bennett had declared war on those who endangered his son, and he had won completely. But victory, he was learning, tasted different than he'd expected. Not sweet, not bitter, just quiet. Final. The war was over. Now came the peace. Chapter 9, New Beginnings. 1 year later, Cole stood in the kitchen of their new house, a larger home in a better neighborhood, built with the profits from his expanding construction business. Danny, now 9 and fully recovered from his injuries, was helping him make pancakes for breakfast. Dad, Jenny's mom wants to know if you're coming to the school fundraiser next week. Jenny Martinez was Danny's classmate and closest friend. Her mother, Sophia, was a single mom who worked as a nurse at the hospital where Danny had recovered. Over the past few months, She and Cole had developed a cautious friendship that was slowly becoming something more. "Tell Mrs. Martinez I'll be there," Cole said, flipping a pancake perfectly. "Are you going to ask her to dance?" Danny grinned mischievously. "Maybe. Think I should. Yeah. She's really nice, and she makes good cookies." Cole laughed, a sound that came more easily now than it had in years. The darkness that had consumed him during his war against Linda and Troy had gradually lifted, replaced by something lighter and more hopeful. The doorbell rang, and Danny raced to answer it. Through the window, Cole could see Sofia Martinez standing on the porch with a coffee and a shy smile. "Good morning," she said when Cole joined them at the door. "I was in the neighborhood and thought you might want coffee. The good kind, not the construction site sludge you usually drink." "How do you know what I drink at work?" "Danny told me. He's very concerned about your caffeine intake." Cole accepted the coffee gratefully. Sophia was beautiful in a quiet, understated way. Dark hair, kind eyes, and an easy laugh that made Danny light up whenever she was around. "Want to come in? We're making pancakes." "I don't want to intrude." "Please," Danny interrupted. "Dad makes the best pancakes, and we have way too many." As Sophia joined them in the kitchen, Cole felt something he hadn't experienced in years: contentment. Not the cold satisfaction of revenge completed, but the warm pleasure of building something new and good. "How's work going?" Sophia asked, settling at the kitchen table. "Better than expected. We just landed the contract for the new elementary school downtown." Cole poured batter into the pan. "Turns out there's good money in building things instead of tearing them down." Sophia understood the deeper meaning. Over the past months, Cole had told her most of the story, about Linda's betrayal, Troy's violence, the year-long campaign of revenge that had consumed his life. She'd listened without judgment, understanding that sometimes good men had to do hard things to protect their children. "Any word from Linda?" Sophia asked quietly. "Her parole hearing got moved up. Could be out in 2 years instead of 6. Danny looked up from his coloring book. "Will she come here?" "No, buddy. Part of her sentence requires her to stay away from us." Cole ruffled his son's hair. "But even if she tried, she knows better." Cole had made sure Linda understood that her release wouldn't change anything. Danny was his son now, legally and completely. Any attempt to re-enter their lives would trigger consequences that would send her back to prison permanently. "Good," Danny said simply, then went back to his artwork. After breakfast, Sophia helped clean up while Danny played in the backyard. She and Cole worked in comfortable silence, their movements synchronized like a couple who'd been together for years instead of months. "I have something to tell you," Sophia said, drying the last plate. Cole tensed slightly. In his experience, those words rarely preceded good news. "Jenny's father wants to meet you." Cole relaxed. "The one in San Diego? He's coming for Jenny's birthday next month. I told him about us, about you and Danny, and he wants to make sure you're good enough for his daughter." Sophia smiled. "I told him you saved my life and hers when we needed it most." It was true. Sophia had been struggling financially when they'd met, working double shifts to afford Jenny's medical expenses from a chronic condition. Cole had quietly arranged for his insurance to cover the costs, claiming it was a family friend benefit from his policy. "What did you tell him about my past?" "I told him you're a good man who protected his family when they needed it most. The rest is nobody's business but ours." Cole pulled Sophia into his arms, marveling at how perfectly she fit against him. "And us? What are we telling people about us?" "We're telling them we're building something real, something that will last." Through the kitchen window, they could see Danny playing soccer in the backyard, practicing the skills his new coach had taught him. The boy was happy, confident, secure in the knowledge that his father would always protect him. "Cole," Sophia said quietly, "I need you to know something." "What's that?" "I'm not afraid of your past. What you did to protect Danny, that's not darkness. That's love." Cole kissed her forehead, feeling the last of his old guilt finally release its hold on him. Sophia was right. Everything he'd done had been motivated by love for his son and a refusal to let evil go unpunished. "I love you," he said, surprising himself with how easily the words came. "I love you too. Both of you." That evening, as Cole tucked Danny into bed, his son looked up with the serious expression he wore when thinking about important things. "Dad, are you happy now?" "Very happy, buddy. Are you?" "Yeah. I like our new life." "Me too, son. Me too." As Cole turned off the lights and headed to his own room, He reflected on the journey that had brought them here. A year ago, he'd been consumed with rage and the need for vengeance. He'd waged war against those who'd betrayed his family, and he'd won completely. But the real victory wasn't Linda's imprisonment or Troy's suffering. The real victory was the life he'd built in the aftermath, a life where Danny could grow up safe and loved, where Cole could find happiness again, where the future held promise instead of threat. Cole Bennett had learned that sometimes the most important battles weren't fought with weapons or schemes or elaborate revenge plots. Sometimes they were fought with pancakes and soccer games and quiet moments of building trust with someone new. And sometimes, winning meant knowing when to stop fighting and start living. In the darkness of his bedroom, Cole smiled and fell asleep to the sound of his son's peaceful breathing down the hall. The war was over. The peace was just beginning. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.